My father broke me, but I was about to take back what was mine. When I found out what he did, I couldn't believe my eyes. He thought I'd just back down, but I wasn't the type to fade into the shadows, and that's when everything went to hell. Mel Gibson, 68 years old, had been in the game long enough to know the rules. Hollywood had an unspoken code. Step out of line and you're done. No warnings, no second chances. You play along, smile for the cameras, read the lines they give you, and for years he did. Not because he believed in the act, but because he understood the stakes. But now he was done pretending. It started like any other press junket. A polished studio, a strategically lit stage, an audience that was about as real as a $3 bill. The kind of event where the questions were scripted, the reactions were rehearsed, and the truth was whatever they decided it should be. Mel knew the setup the moment he walked in. The oversized leather chairs, the giant LED screen displaying the Remington Report, and of course, Todd Remington himself, America's favorite media puppet, with his perfect suit, perfect teeth, and that smug, camera-ready grin. The man was a corporation in human form. So, Mel, Todd leaned in, placing one hand on his knee like they were just two old pals having a friendly chat. You've been a bit controversial over the years. Mel smirked. Yeah, he knew where this was going. Todd kept the fake smile plastered on. You've made some, let's say, bold claims about Hollywood. You've talked about corruption, political hypocrisy, even media manipulation. Don't you think that's a little conspiracy theory-ish? The audience laughed on cue. Mel just sat back, staring Todd down like a lion watching a house cat try to act tough. You ever notice how the truth gets labeled as crazy the moment it threatens someone's paycheck? Silence. Todd's smile twitched, just slightly, before he caught himself. Well, I wouldn't say that, but you wouldn't say anything you weren't told to say. Mel's voice was ice cold, cutting through the air like a blade. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Todd's face. The guy was good, but he wasn't that good. A lifetime of media training couldn't hide real fear. Mel leaned forward, slow and deliberate. Let's talk about conspiracies. The same people who tell you what to think, what to say, what's real and what's fake, those are the people running the whole show. And buddy, it ain't about the movies anymore. The audience had gone completely still. No one even fake laughed this time. Even the crew, camera operators, sound guys, production assistants, had stopped moving. Todd swallowed, his confidence cracking just enough for Mel to see it. Are you saying, I'm saying, your bosses lie for a living? Todd stammered. That's ridiculous. Mel smiled. Yeah, then why are your earpiece guys panicking right now? Todd blinked. For the first time, the guy looked genuinely rattled. He reached up, almost unconsciously touching his earpiece. The tiny little voice feeding him every question, every reaction, every scripted gotcha moment. Mel tilted his head, watching him. That's right. You're not the one asking the questions, Todd. You're just repeating what they tell you, like a good little soldier. Todd sat frozen, the weight of 100 unseen eyes pressing down on him. Mel leaned back, arms crossed. You want to know who really runs Hollywood? The real power behind the curtain? You won't find them on any Forbes list. They don't need the spotlight. They control it. And they control you, Todd. And just like that, the broadcast cut to commercial. The studio lights dimmed. A flurry of movement erupted behind the cameras. Producers scrambling, stage managers barking orders. A woman with a clipboard nearly tripping over a cable as she ran to the control booth. Mel just sat there, completely unfazed. Todd, meanwhile, looked like he had just swallowed a golf ball. A voice crackled through his earpiece, loud enough that even Mel could hear the muffled panic. We're cutting this. We're cutting this now. Todd blinked rapidly, his lips parting like he wanted to say something, but no words came out. Mel stood up, adjusted his jacket, and clapped a hand on Todd's shoulder. Good talk. Then, without another word, he walked off the stage. And just like that, the war had begun. Mel wasn't the type to lose sleep over headlines. He had been in Hollywood long enough to know how the game worked. The second the cameras cut, the machine kicked into high gear. By the time the sun came up, every major outlet was running the same script. Mel Gibson loses it in bizarre rant, spreads dangerous misinformation. They had the clips ready to go, all expertly chopped and stitched together like a horror trailer. Gone was Todd's stammering. Gone was the uncomfortable silence. Instead, they looped 5 seconds of Mel saying, "The media lies for a living," over and over again, like he had lost his grip on reality. By noon, Hollywood had already made up its mind. Agents dropped him. Studios pulled his funding. Longtime friends, radio silence. The whole thing was so predictable it was almost funny, almost. But the real kicker, the part that almost made him admire their efficiency, they started digging. Breaking, insider leaks disturbing past allegations against Gibson. The headlines poured in, fabricated stories, repackaged scandals, half-truths stretched into full-blown nightmares. Suddenly, anonymous sources were coming out of the woodwork with wild accusations. One claimed he was involved in trafficking. Another swore he had ties to extremist groups. None of it had a shred of truth. Not that it mattered, because the trick wasn't proving anything. The trick was making the accusations loud enough that people wouldn't care. And it worked. Within 48 hours, he was blacklisted. Not in the dramatic, career-ending way where they hold a press conference and denounce you. No, Hollywood was more elegant than that. His projects just disappeared. His meetings canceled. His name? Suddenly a bad investment. The phone calls stopped. The emails dried up. And that's when he knew. They weren't trying to fight him. They were trying to erase him, which meant they were scared. Because while they were busy burying his name under a mountain of fake scandals, he was busy finding proof. See, there was a list. Not a Hollywood blacklist. He had been on that one before. This was different. This was a media blacklist. Not for actors, not for directors, but for journalists. People who had dug too deep. Reporters who had gotten a little too curious about the wrong people. Whistleblowers who had dared to ask the wrong questions. Some had just been fired. Others? They vanished. And one of those names? Todd Remington. The same Todd who had smirked at him across that glossy TV set. The same Todd who had laughed on cue when the audience was supposed to mock him. Todd, who, according to the studio schedule, was supposed to be live on air right now. Only problem? Todd wasn't answering his phone, and Mel had a feeling he never would again. Mel had seen this playbook before. It was the same routine they pulled anytime someone went off script. First, they'd twist your words, chop up your interviews, turn you into a meme, and let the internet rip you apart. Then, when the world was already laughing at you, they'd pull out the real ammunition, career-ending scandals, anonymous sources, conveniently timed investigations, and right on cue, the next morning, every major network was reading from the same script. Mel Gibson loses it in bizarre rant, spreads dangerous misinformation. They had the clips ready to go, edited to make him look like a rambling old man who had finally snapped. The context? Gone. The part where Todd had panicked, where the audience had gone dead silent, where Mel had called out the entire system on live television, all cut. Instead, they looped one line over and over like a bad remix. The media lies for a living. No questions, no explanations. Just a sentence, played enough times to turn it into a joke. By noon, Hollywood had already done the math. Agents dropped him, studios pulled his funding, old friends ghosted. The industry had cut him off so fast it was almost like he had never existed. Mel had to admit it was impressive. He had spent decades in this business. He knew how powerful the machine was, but watching it turn on him, this fast, this precise, felt like seeing a magician reveal the trick you had always suspected, but never quite understood. The real kicker? They didn't just want to cancel him. They wanted to erase him. It wasn't enough to ruin his career. That was just step one. Step two was the character assassination. Breaking insider leaks, disturbing past, allegations against Gibson. Social media was flooded with new information. Only it wasn't new at all. It was a mix of old rumors, blatant lies, and just enough half-truths to make it feel convincing. An anonymous source claimed he was involved in trafficking. Another insider insisted he had ties to extremist groups. A third one swore he had once bribed officials to cover up a scandal. It didn't matter that none of it was true. The point wasn't proof. The point was noise. They didn't need a conviction. They didn't even need a real investigation. They just needed people to hear the accusations enough times to believe them. And it worked. Within 48 hours, Mel was a Hollywood ghost. Not in a flashy, public way where someone holds a press conference and denounces you. No, Hollywood was smarter than that. His projects just disappeared. Upcoming deals gone, meetings canceled, emails unanswered. It wasn't just that people were avoiding him. It was that they were pretending he had never existed at all. And that's when he knew. This wasn't about punishing him. It was about making an example of him, which meant they were scared, because while they were busy erasing his name from history, he was busy finding proof. See, there was a list. Not a Hollywood blacklist. He had been on that one before. This was something else. This was a media blacklist. Not for actors, not for directors, but for journalists. People who had dug too deep. Reporters who had gotten a little too curious about the wrong people. Whistleblowers who had dared to ask the wrong questions. Some were just fired. Others, they vanished. And one of those names, Todd Remington. The same Todd who had tried to humiliate him on live TV. The same Todd who had laughed on cue when the audience was supposed to mock him. Mel had looked up the network's schedule. Todd was supposed to be on air right now. Only problem? Todd wasn't answering his phone. No new posts, no updates, not even a public statement about the interview. Mel tried his personal number, straight to voicemail. He checked Todd's last known location. According to the network, he had left the studio after the broadcast, but no one had seen him since. Mel sat back, tapping his fingers against the table. It wasn't just him. Todd had been erased too, and that changed everything. This wasn't just about canceling Mel. Something bigger was happening. And for the first time in a long time, Mel wasn't the one being hunted. He was the one doing the hunting. Mel had spent his whole life on film sets, watching explosions, shootouts, and high-speed chases from the safety of a director's chair. This was different. The SUV rocketed down the empty street, tires screeching as it swerved past traffic. Gunfire rattled in the distance, but the attackers weren't following. Not yet. Mel twisted in his seat, his heart still hammering. He glanced at the driver and felt every hair on his body stand up. No way. "You look like you've seen a ghost," the driver smirked, eyes locked on the road. Mel swallowed hard. "I have." Because sitting behind the wheel, gripping it like they were born for high-speed escapes, was James Cole, a journalist, a friend, and according to every news report from 3 years ago, a dead man. Mel had been at James's funeral. Closed casket. Car accident, they had said. Tragic. Instant. No body for the public to see. Just a few blurry photos of a wrecked vehicle on a highway. But now James was here, very much alive, driving like he had a death wish and something to prove. "James," Mel forced the words out, brain still catching up. "What the—" "Not now," James cut him off, flipping a hard left that sent Mel slamming into the door. "We need to get off the grid." Mel clenched his jaw, his house gone, his name erased. Todd, dead. And now a man who was supposed to be buried 6 feet under was rescuing him from an elite hit squad. Yeah, off the grid sounded good. The SUV tore through side streets, weaving into an underground parking garage. James killed the engine, scanning the area before speaking again. "They won't stop, Mel." Mel exhaled sharply. "Yeah, I kind of figured that out when they kicked in my front door." James turned, eyes serious. "No, you don't get it. They don't cancel people like you anymore. They don't just ruin your career and call it a day. If you start connecting the wrong dots, they erase you entirely." Mel leaned back, running a hand down his face. Everything was moving too fast. Todd's final words echoed in his mind. "I have proof, but they know I took them." And then gunshots. Mel took a deep breath. Todd had documents, names. He said it wasn't just Hollywood. It was everything. James nodded. "It is," and Todd was right. Mel's stomach twisted. "So," he said slowly, "who are they?" James hesitated. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a flash drive. "They're the people who killed Todd." He tossed it onto the dashboard. "And if we don't move fast, they'll kill us too." "What would you do in his place? Would you fight back?" or disappear. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you or someone you know ever faced something similar? Don't forget to like and spread the word. This story was made to shed light on an important issue and make the world a better place.